Mortal Kombat 9 was a massive success. It sold incredibly well, and it pretty much redeemed the franchise in the eyes of the general public. Rather than dive back into the series a mere 2 years after the last game came out like they had been doing for nearly 10 years, Ed Boon and team decided to give the series a rest. A wise idea. No doubt working on the series for so long had exhausted them. So it was for the best. I was a little annoyed that all those characters were stuck as remnants, but nothing I could do. So what was NetherRealm Studios going to do? Well, DC had long since lost a step on Marvel in the creative industry. Marvel's kicking their asses in movies, and had a sizable fighting game market with the Marvel vs. Capcom series. So perhaps it was time to give DC a presence, and that's exactly what we got in Injustice: Gods Among Us, which continues DC's odd trend of not having DC in the title. Thank the Dark Knight for that. Before we begin, I will not be covering the Injustice comic book. I have heard good things, but that's not the focus here. Since we now have a full cinematic story mode, I will judge the story on its own merits. So with that out of the way, we got another story to dig into. Let's begin with the story of Injustice: Gods Among Us. It's heavily inspired by the episode A Better World from the Justice League animated series. So if you've seen it, you know exactly what you're gonna get. I don't have a problem, I love that show, and I love The Dark Knight, by the way. It was one of my favorite shows when I was growing up. First, we open with a quote by Lex Luthor. Yeah, that's good to know. Thanks. So we begin with a shot of Metropolis having been destroyed by a nuke. Everyone's in shock. Or at least I believe so. The drama of this scene is really underscored by the fact that everybody has the exact same face. Inside the GCPD, Batman is questioning Joker as to where he got the nuke. They're playing their usual song and dance, but at that moment, Superman breaks down the wall. He's clearly distraught and says that he was drugged and that this apparently cost him Lois and his son. Joker continues to push Superman, and though Batman tries to prevent it, Superman drives his fist through Joker's chest, killing him. Elsewhere, in what I assume to be the main DC universe, our heroes are repelling a typical villain assault led by Lex Luthor. There is some good action here. A huge improvement over Mortal Kombat 9 where the fights were not choreographed. Our Batman is heading to Arkham Asylum to make sure that Joker hasn't been busted out. Of course he has. Batman heads back up to the Watchtower where they are able to defeat Luthor, who reveals that he gave Joker a nuke to blow up Metropolis. Batman heads down to Metropolis to deal with Joker. A standoff ensues. Batman rushes towards Joker, who's about to press the button, when suddenly, Batman, Joker, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, and Aquaman are transported to another world. But something is different as Batman and Joker are surrounded by the police. Batman is able to elude capture while Joker sneaks away.
I'm in a nightmare.
That you are, Batman. That you are. Control then switches over to Green Lantern. He and the rest of our heroes, minus Batman, are trying to figure out where they are. Aquaman decides to head to Atlantis to find out what's going on, while Green Lantern heads to recharge his ring. Here, Green Lantern discovers Deathstroke being tortured by Cyborg and Raven. Rather gleefully, I might add. Green Lantern defeats them both, and when he asks Slade who's in charge, Slade doesn't really give him an answer. Because, hey, gotta keep it a secret, right? So Green Lantern heads back to Wonder Woman and Green Arrow, who are being attacked by Sinestro, and by himself, the Regime Green Lantern. Well, I should say he's gone yellow. He's Yellow Lantern now. So after fending them off, our heroes come across Batman, but not their Batman. I'll get into that. We get a brief cut back to the heroes who weren't transported, who are trying to find the temporal displaced heroes. We then cut to Aquaman, who asks the archivist at Atlantis as to what has transpired. He tells them of how Superman has established a regime, after Joker tricked him into killing Lois and his unborn son, which set off the nuke that destroyed Metropolis. It's as you know exposition, but it's justified because this world's Aquaman doesn't know about this. He eventually meets this world's Flash, and the formerly known as Captain Marvel, Shazam. He discovers that his alternate self has agreed to let Superman rule Atlantis. Of course, Aquaman isn't going to allow this, and he does come off as a total badass. Eat your heart out, super friends. Before any of this can resume, the god of war, Ares, appears and tells Aquaman about the insurgents, which is basically the rebellion against Superman's regime. Ares teleports Aquaman to the insurgency base where he meets their leader, Batman. Green Arrow is taking some kind of pill which basically amplifies a person's strength and physique to Kryptonian levels. It's basically a convenient plot armor to explain why characters can survive getting thrown through buildings in this game. Batman explains that he brought them here so that he can obtain a kryptonite weapon he can use against Superman. Here we also see that this Lex Luthor is actually a hero who, while acting as Superman's best friend, is secretly funding the insurgents. Meanwhile, Regime Superman is looking despondent, clearly not in the mood to have sex with Wonder Woman. Though, with her face looking like that, I don't blame him. Yellow Lantern tells him of the emergence of the temporal displaced heroes. We cut to the Joker, who is looking for his old gang. He scuffles with the main universe's Batman, and manages to get the upper hand because Batman hurts his leg. Joker hides while the regime takes Batman away, mistaking him for their world's Batman. Joker meets Harley, and in a rare pet-the-dog moment, Joker convinces Harley that he's the real Joker. She takes him to the Joker gang, who are causing trouble against Superman in revenge for the Joker's death. They are attacked by the regime, to which Harley signals Batman and the insurgents. They arrive and learn that the main universe's Batman has been captured.
Your eyes, pure evil, just like his.
That's not very good writing. Meanwhile, Regime Superman realizes that this Batman isn't the Batman they know, and realizes he's one of the duplicates. While back in the main universe, Superman and the others discover a location to where the temporal displaced heroes are, and they plan to pull them back. We see that Deathstroke has agreed to join the insurgents. Then Control switches to Green Arrow, where our heroes are breaking into Wayne Manor, where Batman recounts what happened when his identity was exposed, and how Superman was tricked into killing Lois.
No.
Why are you so shocked? You already heard this story. Here's what I think the story mode has significantly improved over MK9's, is that we do see non-arena backgrounds for the story mode to flesh it out, so good job there. Our heroes fight off some more of the regime, eventually making their way down to the Batcave where they find the kryptonite. Meanwhile, back in the main universe, they attempt to lure the displaced heroes back, but an accident causes Cyborg to end up in the Injustice universe. After a brief misunderstanding, Cyborg joins the cause. Superman discovers that they have retrieved the kryptonite, and thus tries to bait the heroes into a trap. He announces that Batman will be executed, thus the hero's priority is now to rescue Batman. Cyborg manages to head to the Hall of Justice with Deathstroke to hack into the Watchtower. Cyborg gets an encounter with Catwoman and his regime self, where they both play Galaga against each other.
How about I return the favor?
So we cut to Deathstroke. It's here we get a scene where Flash and Shazam debate over the moral ethics of what they're doing, so it's good to see that not all heroes are comfortable with what Superman is doing. Slade beats them and triggers the Watchtower to blow. Then, on orders from Luthor so he can weaponize the kryptonite, he won't allow Batman to do it, under the reasoning that the insurgents will die with him. Meanwhile, Insurgents Batman gets Harley's gang to cause distractions, while he leads the arrangement to rescue Batman. Meanwhile, Deathstroke is able to get the weapon. So a massive battle to rescue Batman takes place. Aquaman summons an army of his own to distract Regime Superman. Control then switches over to Insurgents Batman. Yeah, characters like Raven, Nightwing, they don't get chapters, but Batman gets 2 chapters. We get some info about how Catwoman joined the regime, which split her and Batman apart, and we get this interesting scene.
Sure, he can be an uptight jerk, but you abandon him for Superman?
I'm not Dick Grayson.
This is Damian Wayne.
Wayne?
His son. But Superman's been more of a father than you ever were.
You stopped being my son when you killed Dick Grayson. He was my son.
Oh, if only Dick had been around to hear that. So they managed to break in and bust out Batman. Making their way out, they are confronted by Regime Superman.
Like he did?
This isn't about Joker. It's about you.
I perfected this world. So many lives lost because I held back when I should have used all my power.
For what? To control? To oppress?
I could have prevented Metropolis, saved my family.
Crime took my family too, Clark.
If you weren't the gun. Now.
That's actually a good line. Kudos. But fortunately they are beamed away. Regime Superman heads to the Watchtower, but it blows up before he can get there. He hears someone challenge him. We go back to 3 hours ago as we play as Luthor. Luthor heads out in his power suit, where he encounters Joker and Harley. After he beats Harley, Joker decides to abuse Harley because he's an asshole, and it's what he does. But Luthor saves Harley. Here we get a good bit of character development from Harley, where she finally realizes what Joker has done to her. She doesn't kill him because... yeah, why not? Luthor manages to beat Shazam, and he prepares to kill Superman. But just before he can unleash his blast, Shazam is able to stop him. Superman is stunned that his best friend was conspiring against him, and he kills Luthor. But this causes the people to finally complain against him, and he hears it all. Gotta say, I'm not sure how nobody was complaining before. I mean, he is a totalitarian. Oh boy. He's finally had enough, and he prepares to unleash total anarchy and chaos on the planet, and eventually do the same to the main universe. But Shazam has finally had enough, and he insists that there should be limits on them.
Man's world is incapable of self-rule. We will preserve order.
No, no, there have to be limits. Even on us. Especially on us.
That's enough!
We can't do this. Have you gone nuts? Lois would never want it. Just...
well, after that, Flash has finally had enough, and he turns on the regime. Making his way to the insurgents, he tells them of Superman's plan. Our heroes want to stay and help, but Insurgents Batman just wants to send them home because their plan failed, and that they will at the very least be buying them time to prepare for when Superman comes over to their dimension. Main Batman suggests that they should bring over Main Superman to deal with this. Insurgency Batman doesn't agree, but the regime attacks. Control then switches over to Wonder Woman, who is teleported by Ares to the Themyscira. If Superman wins, all conflict will be brought to a halt, so that's why he wants Superman stopped. Wonder Woman confronts her regime self and chides her for her actions. Wonder Woman defeats her regime self and convinces the Amazons to switch sides. Meanwhile, the two Batmans are back at the Batcave. They fight before Main Batman finally convinces Insurgency Batman that they need to bring Main Superman over, which they do. Quark is brought up to speed on what's happening.
I realize this isn't entirely accurate, but it's good to have you back.
Aw, I like it when they're friends. So Superman pretty handily beats all the regime for everyone. Well, that is Superman for ya. But the fight with Doomsday takes him to the Fortress of Solitude where he defeats him there. So the two Supermans finally confront each other, where we get our typical good, bad Superman contrast. It's nice to see Superman actually being heroic after a movie like Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman where he's so grim. Superman manages to beat his regime self and finally all's well. All loose ends are tied up. Insurgents Batman and Superman talk about how regime Superman will stand trial for what he's done. Main Superman reflects that he does understand how his alternate self went down this path. So everything's wrapped up. A nice little ending. No need for a tease. Yeah, this is NetherRealm. Of course there's a tease for the next game. So that's Injustice Gods Among Us story. Compared to Mortal Kombat 9's story, this is a huge improvement. It does have a 3-act structure, and it doesn't really rely on an idiot plot like MK9's did. There are some moments that feel like plot contrivance. Yeah, that whole pill thing is such a cheap plot device. The whole good and bad heroes plot has been done before, and done better, particularly in the DCAU. Seriously, if you haven't watched The Better World, go watch it now, you will not regret it. There are also less filler fights like there were in MK9, so the plot keeps moving. Thankfully, there's no 1-on-2 fights this time around, and they do add some minigames to freshen up the experience. These basically boil down to pressing a button. Usually this determines how much health you or your opponent might have before starting the battle, so this does add some interactivity to the story mode. There is a weird moment where Superman destroys non-parked cars with his heat vision. Seriously, what the hell, Superman? Overall, the story is serviceable. It does its job admirably. However, it is still a glorified training mode, and I don't expect that to change. Now for the presentation. The graphics are admirable, but I noticed a little stuttering which I blame on the PS4 remastering. Seriously, am I the only one who's noticed this? The costumes? Some of them don't look good. What's up with Batman's cowl? But if you don't like it, that's what the alternate costumes are for. You can play as Batman in his Arkham City costume, or even his Batman Beyond costume. You can play as Superman in his Man of Steel duds. Not sure why you'd ever do that, but it's there if you want it. Shame the DLC characters don't get costumes. The voice acting is top notch. You got voices from the DCAU reprising their roles. Kevin Conroy, George Newbern, and Susan Eisenberg all reprise their roles. It's even got the voice actors from Young Justice for Aquaman and Lex Luthor. Even some from the Teen Titans cartoon with Carrie Payton and Tara Strong playing Cyborg and Raven. Though Tara Strong sounds virtually unrecognizable. My one complaint, and this is more of a nitpick, but it is odd to see Kevin Conroy's Batman opposite a Joker that isn't played by Mark Hamill. I can't be the only one who thinks that, and I already mentioned it, but Wonder Woman's face? Yeah. Ugh. Let's move on. The roster is a good balance of heroes and villains. Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Joker, Green Lantern, with added DLC such as Batgirl, Lobo, Zod, and of course Scorpion makes his appearance as a guest fighter because, well, he's Ed Boon's favorite character. Additions like Catwoman and Bane make sense because The Dark Knight Rises was a fairly recent movie at the time, so it made sense to capitalize. Same with Zod being DLC since Man of Steel was coming out around that time, so it's about what you'd expect. There is still some blood, but not nearly as much as MK because no way DC would allow it. With that, let's move on to the gameplay. Injustice does set itself apart to feel similar, but different from its sister series. What do I mean by that? Well, you link combos with your special moves like you did in Mortal Kombat. You can even execute pop-ups and juggling like you could in MK. You have 4 attack buttons, but this time you have a light attack, a medium attack, and a heavy attack, with the 4th button being a dedicated character power. For example, Batman will summon bats, while Superman will channel his strength. At least I think that's what's happening here. Injustice doesn't have a block button like MK. Instead, you press back to block like you do in Street Fighter, and I don't mind this. The super meter returns functioning the same way it did in MK9. You can use it to execute EX special moves. There's no breakers, instead you can perform a block escape, and you build your meter all the way up. You can execute a super attack, and these are about what you'd expect, completely over the top, but these are superheroes and villains, so I don't mind. You can also pull off these super combo attacks, which I tend to do by accident. Injustice also does away with the round format, instead having 2 life bars. What Injustice does offer new is the clash system. When a character is low on health, they can initiate a class, where the fighters will share some interesting dialogue.
You are no Sub-Zero.
I'm Batman.
You know you can't beat me.
Never say never.
Not sharing Batman with you.
What? Ew.
Oh, awkward. You basically wager your super meter, whoever bets the most wins the clash. If the one who initiates it wins, they get some health back. If you lose, you receive damage. One thing I must criticize is what's up with characters getting up from being knocked down and then going into their defeat poses anyway. Just kinda weird. But now for the next part of the gameplay, the stages. Yeah, they really dropped the ball on the stages. There's not a whole lot of them. There's just day and night variations, but the stages do factor into the gameplay. For starters, you can actually interact with the stages by simply knocking your opponent into the background. This causes a lot of damage, as you can see buildings coming down just from the chaos unleashing. These are gods, after all. This is where the different kinds of characters come to play. For example, when cornered, a gadget character like Batman can perform an athletic leap to get out of the corner, or in some cases attach an explosive to blow it up, whereas characters with super strength can just grab it and throw it. Finally, there's also stage transitions, where you can knock your opponent into the next part of the stage. These do a lot of damage, and they are a lot of fun to watch. In addition to the main gameplay, there's also Stars Labs, which is basically the challenge tower from MK9. I didn't spend a lot of time in this mode because now you have to collect 3 stars, and that's a pain. But it's there to add some variety. Online mode returns, and I tried to see if anyone was still playing, but yeah, no luck. Finally, there's arcade mode. There's a lot of variety in which modes you want to do. I'm mainly stuck with Classic, which is just your typical 10 battles. You always fight Regime Superman in the end. You always get the same defeat animation. He's getting sucked into the Phantom Zone. He thinks about everything that's happened. Then his soul gets sucked up, but he keeps walking anyway. Then he gets sucked into the Phantom Zone. Just kinda weird. The endings are the same presentation as MK9, in that they look really nice. And unlike MK9, which were almost all what-ifs, these endings actually do provide some idea on what happened after story mode's conclusion. So I appreciate that. There's not much to say about them personally. So that's Injustice Gods Among Us. It's another hit for NetherRealm Studios. It's well designed, it'll feel similar to MK players, and also has its own sense of identity. So I give Injustice a thumbs up. Bring on Injustice 2 in a couple of months, but it's time to finish this marathon. We are returning to the world of Mortal Kombat with Mortal Kombat X. I probably won't have it out before Christmas, but I'll try to have it out before the year ends. So Merry Christmas, please hit that like button and subscribe, it'll help my channel grow. Thanks for watching, have a fantastic day, this is RetrospectGreg signing off.